So the government says it wants to build a $1 trillion economy in the next couple of years. I'm afraid to say this, as much as I sincerely wish this government well, because if it's well with the government, if it's well with the administration, it's well with all of us, think people. So I genuinely wish this government well. However, when they say that their goal is to build a $1 trillion economy, they are going about it the wrong way. They are putting policies in place to make sure that the economy shrinks rather than grow. How do I mean? Nigeria is reported to have about 200 official and unofficial taxes. So we have a 30% corporate income tax rate, we have a 24% personal income tax rate, we have value added taxes at 7.5% scheduled to increase in the coming years, we have a consumption tax, and so many taxes, both at the state, the federal, and the local government level. Now, far be it from me to be a supporter of mainstream economics, but even in mainstream economics, taxes are referred to as contractionary fiscal policy. So when you tax, you are contracting the economy. When you want the economy to shrink, you tax. Now, I know there are people who say then that money is eventually spent and then it expands the economy. That's silly. I'll get to that another time. That's nonsense Keynesian economics. I could get to that in another video. I'm just here to talk about the tax. So taxing in itself is contractionary policy. It shrinks your economy. And if your goal, Mr. President, if your goal is to grow the economy, when you tax the economy, you are making it shrink. You are doing the exact opposite of what you said. Now, this government is hell-bent on raising revenues, and I understand where they are coming from, but I disagree with what they're doing. They just imposed a 0.5% cyber tax, whatever that means, where certain transactions you make, the government will take 0.5% of it. This is only worsening the problem. You do not build a $1 trillion economy by taxing the people. So how do you build an economy, Mr. President, or anyone else who's listening to this? You build an economy by having real savings. If a man has 100,000 naira and 50,000 of that 100,000 is sufficient to meet all his needs for that month, he saves 50,000 naira in the bank, or he puts it in the capital markets or whatever, that money, credit market, that money eventually is taken up by some potential investor who uses it to make goods and services that people would consume tomorrow, would consume in the future. But when the government decides, I will take 30% of that money, the person is left with 70 and then would only have 20% in savings. When this individual has 24% of his personal income taken from him, he has less to save. When for every commodity you purchase, there is a 7.5% value added tax, you have less to save. Now, this is not to talk about the much bigger elephant in the room of inflation. The Nigerian currency is being devalued every day intentionally. Now, when I say intentionally, I'm not saying it's done out of malice. It's direct policy. The inflation is not something that's just miraculously happening. It's not caused by speculation or Binance or cryptocurrencies or importation or any of these things that the government and its apologists gave as the reason for the the horrible exchange rates and the inflation in the country. Inflation, those things are minuscule. The actual cause of inflation, as I explained in a video I made last month, the actual cause, you should go watch that. The actual cause of inflation is an increase in the money supply. The CBN just prints money into existence, and that is what causes prices to go up. That is what causes the naira to fall against the dollar and other currencies. As I said in that video, the naira is not the dollar isn't going up. The naira is what's going down. The dollar is actually going down, but the naira is going down at a much faster rate than the dollar, which is why it looks like the exchange rates look the way they are. But you could go watch that video. So the government appears to be doing everything in its power to reduce people's ability to have real savings. Mr. President, Central Bank Governor, Minister of Finance, whoever is watching this, whoever is listening to this, the way to build a $1 trillion economy is to allow the people have savings. Now, I'm going to give 4 steps the government should take if indeed their goal is to build the $1 trillion economy. And believe me, if you take these 4 steps, the Nigerian economy would be way above 3 trillion in 10 years. Way above 3 trillion in 10 years, if the government follows these 4 simple suggestions that I am about to make. Now, these suggestions are an oversimplification, but I'm not here to teach a lecture on economics. I'm here to just give bullet points. I write articles on this stuff, so anyway, whatever. Step number 1: cut taxes. There are too many taxes in Nigeria, and the tax rates are actually very high. Both official and unofficial taxes should be cut. I have my own suggestions, what levels I think what percentage I think the tax should be, but I'm not here to offer details of the proposal. Number 2: cut government spending. This problem we have of corruption, of people embezzling, looting funds, is only possible because the government is spending way too much money. And now that's just on the issue of corruption, not to talk about how the government is crowding out the private sector from growing. So cut spending. Number 3: cut regulation. Nigeria is literally one of the hardest places in the world to do business. I would know. I've done business in Nigeria. It's very difficult, partly because of taxes and then also because of regulation. It's difficult to do business in Nigeria. Many startups, very many startups do not succeed in Nigeria. Many businesses fail. I'm sure you would have driven around and maybe seen a new club or a restaurant or some joint or something that opened up and then died after a couple of years. It is very difficult to do business in Nigeria, and regulations are part of the reason. And number 4, and the most important step of fixing this Nigerian economy, is to stop inflation. What do I mean by that? I'm not referring to contractionary monetary policy. When I say stop inflation, I'm saying stop expanding the money supply. Raise the CRR to 100% and stop printing money so that people can grow real savings. Now, let me just give an illustration. There is this shortbread biscuit. In the 90s, it used to be 100 naira. There's this McVitie's shortbread biscuit. It used to be 100 naira in the early to mid 90s. Today, that same biscuit is almost 3,000 naira in about 2 decades. 2 decades later, a little over 2 decades later, that same 100 naira biscuit is now almost 3,000 naira. If the Nigerian government, as at the time that biscuit was 100 naira, never allowed the money supply expand by 1 naira, that biscuit today would have been maybe 80 or 70 naira. It would have not only would the prices have not risen, but the prices would have fallen, and that would have been better off for, who does not like falling prices, right? Falling prices are only bad in textbooks, but in reality, everyone loves them, and they are actually good for the economy, contrary to what Keynesian economists say. But I'm not here again to give an economics lecture. So cut taxes, cut government spending, cut regulation, and put a stop to the inflation. Mr. President, if you do these 4 things I've recommended, I guarantee you that in 2 years, you will reverse Nigeria's inflation, prices will begin to fall, productivity will begin to rise, and in 2 years, Nigeria will be perhaps the fastest growing economy in the world just by taking these 4 steps. Thank you very much for listening to this, whoever you are. I'm Econ Bro. Feel free to follow me on Twitter. God bless you.